Hello, everyone, and welcome to the free ACT Reading Cram Preview. Today is October 10th, and we're so excited to have you all join us. My name is Rashi,
I'm you both.
and it is so great to see you all, or not see you all, but I guess see you guys in the chat with us today. So this cram is going to be an hour long from 7 to 8 p.m. Just as a quick reminder, make sure you're following at Think Fiveable on all social media. So we're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And I'm just putting this out there. I got this position from seeing the email, so make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're following us on LinkedIn, where you can also see any Fiveable updates. And our social media team does a wonderful job of posting very funny TikToks and very informative things as well on TikTok and Instagram. So it's just at Think Fiveable. Yeah, hit like and subscribe, I guess. As a reminder, Fiveable offers cram mode, so if you're here, you might not necessarily be signed up for this cram mode, but I highly, highly, highly recommend you do, because this is the way you can double your chances at achieving those top exam scores. Cram mode offers you access to practice questions, and these are both unit-specific and have explanations for each question. It's not like online where you'll have a dozen questions on as a practice test, but none of it's tailored towards what you need. In this case, it's specifically towards what unit you're looking for and explains all the answers. Then we have these great cram finales, which offer you unlimited access to all live events in the days before the big exams and deadlines. For example, this one is geared towards the upcoming ACT, which, I mean, that's why you guys are all here. So using cram mode and watching those cram finales will definitely help you out when it comes in time for your test. Then cram mode also offers you study guides, cheat sheets, and study plans. And these are some great comprehensive exam prep to help keep you on track. And finally, with cram mode, you get first access to a bunch of new features. And for example, like the ACT, SAT crams weren't for everyone. Those who signed up for cram mode had first access. So if you want to check out features like that, make sure you go ahead and unlock cram mode. And you can access this on the Fiveable website. Just as a reminder, some quick community agreements. Please be respectful. We're all here to learn in a safe space. Be supportive. We're here to lift each other up and help motivate each other. Be patient. That we only have an hour together, so we want to make sure we're using that in the best of our ability. And be kind. We're all real people here. As a quick agenda, today we just finished the welcome section. We're going to go over the reading section of the ACT. We'll dissect some of those questions and do some practice. We'll do a Q&A, and then we'll do a quick wrap up. So let's get into some actual content. The format of the ACT reading section is it's 35 minutes long, and this averages with 40 total questions, which averages to about 52 seconds per question. Here's a quick tip. You can bring a watch, timer, or stopwatch to pace yourself during testing, but it can't have an alarm. This means that I would not recommend using a smartwatch like an Apple Watch or a Galaxy Watch. Don't use any of those. Instead, use an analog watch. I know, very uncommon nowadays, but use one of those to time yourself. And that way, if you think that you've been spending a while on one particular question, you can look at the clock and see how much time has passed. The section itself has a total score, and then there's a subscore in each of these three ideas. The first one is key ideas and details, and this will be 52 to 60% of the exam. The second is the craft and structure, and this will be 25 to 30%. And lastly, you have the integration of knowledge and ideas, and this will be 13 to 23%. Note that these numbers do not add up to 100% because some questions are used to arrive at more than one subscore, which means that you'll need to know not only how to study each individual section, but also how to apply them together when it comes down to answering questions. There are 4 passage types in the ACT reading section. The first one is social studies, and this will include anthropology, archaeology, economics, education, history, political science, etc. These are definitely tend to be more fact-driven, but occasionally you'll have some historic passages similar to the SAT in that case. Then you'll have natural sciences, and these will be astronomy, biology, botany, chemistry, ecology, medicine, and zoology, etc. So these will always be very much fact-driven. These texts sometimes are a little bit more difficult to get through because they'll throw a lot of technical knowledge at you. But the important thing to remember is that in these cases, everything should be driven or derived directly from the text. Then you have the literary narrative or prose fiction section, and these involve passages taken from short stories, novels, memoirs, and personal essays. So you'll have a lot more first-person sections that become a little bit more personal. Here, the tone or the implied author's meaning becomes very important. And lastly, you have the humanities section, and this includes architecture, art, dance, film, language, literary criticism, music, philosophy, television, etc. So kind of anything that doesn't fall under the other three sections. Now, there are two types of questions in the ACT reading section. The first one is the referring questions type, and this is when you inquire directly about information explicitly stated in the passage. Some reasoning, and so referring questions, the best way to go about these questions is to directly look for that information, just because it's like a very quick skim the text, find what you're looking for, and answer it quickly. And so referring questions, you want to make sure that those are the type of questions that take you less time to answer. Reasoning questions will tend to take a little bit longer because they prompt students to draw conclusions from implied information within the passages. You have to do your own analysis and make sure you know exactly what you're trying to look for within the passage. So some key skills used in the referring section are reading comprehension, scanning text, and keyword identification. If you struggle with reading quickly, you want to focus more on making sure you can do referring questions, just because the more practice you get at scanning the text quickly, the better you'll become at referring questions. Some skills used in the reasoning question section are inferencing, context analysis, and critical thinking, because this is where you'll be forced to draw your own conclusions using information within the passage. There are a lot of additional skills tested on this section, however. For example, the first one, determining main ideas. This could fall under a reasoning type of question, because oftentimes you're not going to have the main idea just directly stated within the text itself. Then you'll have determine the meaning of context-dependent ideas. So they'll give you, like, in this case, the question might ask you about a specific detail located in one of the paragraphs. On its own, the detail might sound like nothing, or it might sound like it's leaning towards one suggestion. But within that specific paragraph, the detail means something entirely different. Understanding the sequence of events, making sure that you can follow along with the exact order that the text is giving it to you. Locating and interpreting significant details. You have comprehending cause and effect relationships, making comparisons, and drawing generalizations. So these are all various skills that are tested, and a lot of these fall under the reasoning category for questions. So let's focus a little bit more on the key ideas and details questions. These questions test your ability to comprehend the text by asking you to, first of all, determine central ideas and themes. We want to make sure that you're able to read a piece of text and understand exactly what the author is trying to say or what theme the overall piece has. Second thing, summarizing information and ideas, making sure you can understand what the central idea is and then what are some background information. Understanding the relationships, so these are either sequential, comparative, or cause and effect. Sequential would be like a list of steps. If you're cooking pasta, it'd be like first boil the water, second drain it, or second add the pasta. Then you have comparative. Maybe one author is, or one paragraph is discussing the pros of a side, the second paragraph is discussing the cons. So putting those two together and seeing how do they compare. And third one is cause and effect. So something happens, what was its impact? And lastly, key ideas and details ask you to draw inferences, making sure that you understand what the implied meaning of the text is. So here on the right, we have some key ideas, questions. They'd be like the main purpose of the third paragraph is to, or the main idea of the last paragraph is to. But then you also have details. For example, one main purpose of the last paragraph is to suggest this through blah, blah, blah. Or based on the passage, the main reason Holmes eventually preferred playing music at weddings and private parties to playing music in clubs was blah, blah, blah. Neither of these are key ideas that a text will actually be focused on. Instead, they're extraneous details thrown in there to distract you from what the actual meaning of the text is. So in this case, you want to make sure that you're looking at exactly what the author is stating. And a great way to work on these types of questions is to annotate them and make sure that you exactly understand what important parts of the paragraph are being discussed. So then you have craft and structure questions. And these are where the ACT will ask you to test your ability to understand the structure and components of a passage by analyzing the word meanings, author's word choices, and the passage's overall organization. So it could look something like, as it's used in line 32, the phrase fit into most nearly means. Or it could be something like, why did the author choose to use the word impact here? Or a third option is asking you to describe the passage's overall organization. Maybe it's a sequential organization, or it's asking you, why did the author choose to do a cause and effect analysis on this particular event in history? And lastly, but the most difficult one, is the integration of knowledge and ideas questions. These test your ability to form well-supported opinions and interpretations. So these are all reasoning-based questions in that you have to draw your own conclusions. And some examples are understanding the author's claims, differentiating between facts and opinions, using evidence to make connections between related texts, analyzing how authors constructed arguments, and evaluating reasoning and evidence from various sources. So let's break this down a little further. Understanding the author's claim, making sure that you actually understand what the author is trying to discuss. I remember doing an ACT analysis where they were talking about the brain and how important it was that children receive a lot of stimulation. But in the second paragraph, the author was discussing the cons of receiving too much stimulation. And so while it seemed at first glance that the author was like, oh, simulation is very important, it was actually that simulation is important, but in moderate amounts. And that key part, that moderate amounts, was very important in answering the questions. Then you have differentiating between facts and opinions. When you read a text, you need to be able to make sure that if something is stated, no matter how confidently it's stated, or if it's stated like a fact, if there's no evidence to back it up, then it's not a fact, which means that it's not scientifically based. It can be included if someone is asking for a guarantee in one of the answers. And then you have using evidence to make connections between related texts. So this goes again back to the comparison type of order, where you'll have, of course, related texts, and you're trying to compare and differentiate them. In this case, you always need to make sure that you have evidence to back up whatever claim you have, whether it's stating that the authors agree on a fact or disagree. Make sure that you find it within the text first, because sometimes after reading a bunch of text, it can be very difficult to remember which passage or which section covered which idea. Again, annotation helps a lot in this case. Then you have analyzing how authors construct arguments. So this specifically goes a lot towards maybe more so the humanities or literary section, where they have a little bit more freeway in the type of structure that they have. But maybe the author is discussing like why a room is depressing, and they're using specific words that indicate it. So analyzing if they're just blatantly saying it, or if it's just a an emphasis through tone and theme. And lastly, you have evaluating reasoning and evidence from various sources, which is a very much indicator of a scientific passage. And so integration of knowledge and ideas questions will often look like, compared to passage A's discussion of the fossil of the original Neanderthal man, passage B's discussion of the Lucy fossil can best be described as. So there are a few things you immediately need to note with this question. First of all, it's asking you to compare the two questions, of course. But the second of all, it's asking you to look at two specific details. The first one is the discussion of the fossil of the original Neanderthal man. You'd have to find that in passage A. Passage B isn't asking for the original man, it's asking for the Lucy fossil. And then after you understand the author's claims on each discussion, then you'll have to compare them. So these questions can be very long and complicated, which is why you need to make sure that you're breaking down your time accordingly. So now we're going to go into some quick practice. Lubov will take over from this section.
So exactly, we'll go over into our practice section of today's session, and we'll give you some time to read this passage and think about the answer. And also drop your answers in the chat when you're ready. Or I can actually create a poll. So it's okay, so I will wait for a few more votes. The poll is visible, so you should be able to put what you think is the correct answer. Just a few more seconds. Even if you're not sure about the answer, just like answer it so we know where to go, what to discuss. But I think we can move on now. So I see that most of the people answered B, but we also had some people answering D. And the correct answer is actually D. And then we'll go over the logic of how to approach such a paragraph and how to try to eliminate the other answers. So let's go over A. So before we actually go into the answers, let's look at what the answers are about. So this paragraph establishes all of the following except. So those types of questions ask us to find something that wasn't actually mentioned in the text, and only this one answer will be the correct one. All others should somehow connect to the question. So in this case, we're looking for something that is wrong, right? The answer that is incorrect instead of the one that is correct. So the first one is A, that Apshu had foster brothers. And then this one is just the one that you will try to look for in the passage. So in the first sentence, we see that actually Apshu was put into a home that already had two other boys from foster care. So we can definitely cross this out and see that this one is incorrect because he actually had foster brothers and it was mentioned in the text. So it's not the incorrect answer that we are looking for. Let's go to the next one. So the second one is that the Masons maintained a clean house. And again, we would find this in the text. So in the text, in the last sentence, is specifically states that the home was kept immaculate. And immaculate means like super clean, tidy. So this was mentioned in the text, and we would not circle this. We would not choose this answer. And I think why people chose B in this case is maybe you weren't sure about the meaning of the word immaculate. So I think in this case, because we have such a short kind of passage and it's an excerpt from the bigger passage that you will see in ACT, then you are not sure about the context, right? And like what follows this last sentence. But when you encounter such questions on the actual test, just try to understand the context, and then it will be much easier to understand the meaning of some words that you're not really sure about. And then C, how Mother Mason felt about the location of their house. So this one you won't find like exact words in the passage for the answer C, as happened with A and B, but then you can kind of understand it from the sentence underlined in green, because it says that Mother Mason insisted that they tell anybody who asked that they actually lived in other place. So it tells something about her opinions, right? And like how she feels about the location of their house. So this was already mentioned in the passage, and we wouldn't choose this answer. And then we are left with the only answer that is incorrect, just because we eliminated all the other ones, right? But then we, of course, will go into D and see that what Abshu remembered most about his years with the Masons. And when we go to the passage, we see that nothing like that was mentioned, and exactly, the paragraph did not establish like the answer D. Okay, we have another passage, and again, you'll have some time to read and think about your answer. And the poll is up, so you should be able to vote when you're ready. Okay, so Don't forget to vote. Just a few more seconds and we'll reveal the correct answer. Okay, so I see the votes for D and also B. And the correct answer is D. So you guys were did a good job here. Really well done. And then let's see what's the logic here. So in this case, the question asks us to find something or to circle something that is actually correct, not like in the previous example, we had something that we needed to choose that wasn't really correct or wasn't mentioned in the passage before. So let's go into A. In the answer A, Amy had previously asked the narrator to stop waking her up during the night. And then when we read the passage or skim it, we don't find any really information about Amy asking the narrator to stop waking her up. There wasn't anything like that. It was said that her sister, my sister Amy, was asleep in the other bed, and some thoughts about her, right? But nothing indicating that Amy asked her not to wake her up during the night. Then let's go to next one. So the next one is B. The narrator knew she could master her own charmed innocent. And then here we find the exact opposite in the passage. So it says that an innocence I needed but couldn't master. So the narrator wanted this, right? But she couldn't master the innocence. And then that's why the answer B is not correct, because it says that the narrator knew she could master, but actually you find in the passage that she couldn't. Next one, Amy had already figured out what the thing was before going to sleep. And again, we don't find any indication that that was the case in the passage, or at least in the excerpt that is presented. She didn't know what it was. There is no name. There's nothing, no detail into that. So we wouldn't find it. And then we're left with D, because everything else wasn't mentioned or was the opposite, right, to the answer that we had. So that's why we could be quite confident that it's D. And then when we look at it, the narrator was afraid of alerting the thing to her own presence. So we can somehow think about it and also find this in the text. So it says that I was afraid to stir enough to wake her. She was useless. It's not a perfect answer, right? When we look at this specific excerpt. So again, eliminating other answers can be a good strategy when you are approaching ACT questions, because sometimes it's not straightforward or you can't find any evidence in the text. So just trying to piece those things together and try to make sense of the text. And then also, of course, try to understand the context that this passage is in. This could help answer ACT questions. Okay, and I think we can take maybe 1 minute break if someone needs to, or if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and we can answer them. And then after that, we'll go into the quiz time. So you will hear some music and we will read some passages and test your abilities. Yes. So this recording, when you go back after this session, when you go back and click the same link, you should be able to see the recording and then just like watch it when you need. So there will be a recording available right after this session, or maybe like a few minutes later. And then while we are taking the break, just join this quiz, and I will put the link in the chat. If it's more convenient for you than scanning. Hi, you guys. Okay, I'll wait one more minute and we'll start. And if you decide to join later, you always can follow the link and participate. Okay. And let me know if you want me to keep the music on or if you want it off. There will be a few like light ones at the beginning, and then we'll move to the passages. Okay, you guys are great. This one is like you will not see this type of question in ACT. It's just for like general knowledge. So all you need to have is like active reading and critical thinking when reading those ACT passages. And also, if you are not sure about the meaning of the word or a phrase, all you need to do is just try to engage with the text and try to understand its context. Yay, 100% correct. I don't think I need to go over this. It's just another tip that when you see like familiar prefixes, suffixes, or root words, that can mean that this word means something similar to the other word that you already know. Okay, and now we finally at the passage stage. It's so huge. I don't even know how to. Let me copy it and paste it into the chat so you guys can read it all, and I will just show the question. Okay, it's in the chat. Sorry, it's big, but try to read it and answer the question when you're ready. Okay. So you guys are super correct, and you chose the right answer, most of you. And then I personally think that the best way to approach the passage, of course, like you all can have different strategies, and what works for you works for you. I like to skim the passage quickly so that I don't spend too much time on the passage, and then don't understand the main idea and then go over it again and again. So I just try to skim it quickly, understand the context, the main idea, and then move to the questions. And then after that, after I read the question, I already can go back to the passage and find the specific part of the passage that is important for me currently, and then answer it. So that's the way I go about it, but it depends on how you like it. Well, your strategy is successful since you mostly were correct. And this one, specifically this question, you can find it in the passage. So you can just refer to the passage, and it says that health professionals thought that those procedures are confusing. So you could have just found it in the text. Move to the next one. And it's the same passage, just another question. Okay, gonna review the answer. Somebody wants to put their. Okay, let's do it. Oh, so now it's split. So we have A, B, and C. And the C is the correct one. The person must lack substantial capacity to appreciate the wrongfulness of their conduct. So in this case, you find the specific quote from the American Law Institute, but it's not like the same in the answers. You just need to kind of rephrase it and make sense of it. And C is the most it's the closest option to the one that is mentioned in the text. That's why. So B would not necessarily be the legal definition by the American Law Institute. It would be just essentially something mentioned in the text, but not the definition. And A is not exactly what the definition is talking about. So C is the closest one. That's why. Again, the same passage, but different question. Okay, 100% correct ones. So yeah, definitely. It also states very clearly in the text that she wanted to to call on revision of that decision because of the political assassination case. So that's why. Move to the next one. Same thing. Or different question but the same paragraph. Okay, let's review it. And again, 100% correct. You guys are really good at those. So yeah, here you just needed to understand the main idea and the context of the passage. And then all the other ones, so A, B, D, yes, they were mentioned in the passage, but it's not the main idea. It was just supporting evidence or something else, but not the main idea, and you guys got it. Don't forget to vote. There is another question. Okay, let's review it. And then, so this one is split between A, B, and D, and the correct one is D. So jurors tend to be sympathetic towards defendants who plead not guilty by reason of insanity. So A would not be like not the main idea of the passage. Again, that's like supporting evidence or something that was mentioned to make the passage more interesting or for other reasons, but it's not like something that not really context, like big context related. So that wouldn't be the case. Then also B, the rule is no longer in use in modern legal systems. Similar to A, it's not the main idea of the passage, not necessarily what we are trying to find, and it's also not correct. I think it's still used just like in the for the opinions of the professionals in the industry, so I think might be the case. So D would be the one that we can infer from the passage, and the other ones we can't necessarily infer, can be true or not true, but not necessarily the ones that we can state with confidence. The next question. Okay, so again, split between B and C. So based on the passage, the answer C would be the one that is the most like true from the information that we have. Another thing that you should remember for ACT passages is that you usually don't need to infer, or like not usually, definitely you don't need to infer anything from your personal experience or take something that you learned somewhere from news or from your friend or whatever else, and then answer the question. What you need to do is use the text that you have and then just try to answer it